This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutastrophe. Welcome to another Sports Catastrophe on this date. And on this day, June 27, 2013, the NBA draft happened. And it was huge. State Farm was the presenting sponsor. New Orleans changed their name from Hornets to Pelicans, so they were the New Orleans Pelicans. Charlotte, this was the last draft they would be called the Bobcats before they turned back to the Hornets moniker. And Canada was happy because they got a #1 draft pick. In fact, it represented the first Canadian pair of lottery picks, the first Iranian draft choice, the first New Zealander to be in the first round, the Bucks selecting someone that actually shocked a lot of people, and the last time that David Stern would announce draft selections, as Adam Silver would take over that role. So people were unsure what would happen in the draft and all that. As a Raptor fan, Toronto didn't have a first-round pick. So as Raptor fans, we didn't really care. Now, how that worked out was that Houston actually acquired Toronto's first-round pick for Kyle Lowry. So this was the pick that the Raptors gave up for Kyle Lowry, and it worked out. And seeing the guy who was picked from Toronto's spot, I think that Toronto missed out completely, but that's okay. So the #1 pick went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were struggling without LeBron once he made that decision to go to Miami. Although we soon would learn a couple of years later, I think 2014 he came back to Cleveland. Anyway, Cleveland, Orlando, and Washington were the top 3 teams in the draft. Cleveland decided to take a freshman from UNLV. No, not Larry Johnson or Stacey Augmon. But they took a forward from Cleveland by UNLV by the name of Anthony Bennett. You may not know about this, but Anthony Bennett, with the #1 pick, became the first Canadian-born player to be picked #1 in the NBA draft. And it's great for Canadian basketball. I mean, Canada has had some great players like Rick Fox, Steve Nash, and Bill Wennington. But Anthony Bennett was going to help the Cleveland Cavaliers out in many ways possible. It was like, wow, that would be huge for the team. And all that. He went to UNLV, he played 1 year. And he was expected to do quite well for himself. So, he went #1. #2 went to Orlando, and they picked from Indiana Junior, a point guard by the name of Victor Oladipo. Perhaps you've heard of him. Victor Oladipo has been playing consistently and all that. Of course, pissing me off, as, you know, I wish the Raptors had him, but the Raptors didn't even have a first-round pick. Oladipo could have been a Raptor a couple times, but he failed. Anyway, Washington had the 3rd pick and took from Georgetown sophomore Otto Porter Jr., small forward. I say Washington kind of made the right move. Rounding out the top 10, Charlotte had Cody Zeller, a center from Indiana. Phoenix took Alex Lynn, a center from Maryland. New Orleans drafted Nerlens Noel. Remember him? Nerlens Noel, center from Kentucky. New Orleans traded him to Philadelphia for Jrue Holiday and the 42nd pick. So they traded Noel to the Sixers. It actually worked out for the Sixers. Sacramento took Ben McLemore, 7th from Kansas, freshman. Detroit took sophomore from Georgia, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Minnesota drafted Trey Burke. I thought Trey Burke was Canadian, but no, he's not. And they traded him to Utah for the 14th pick and the 21st pick. The 14th pick was Shabazz Muhammad, 21st pick, Georgie Dieng. So it worked out for Utah. And #10 pick was CJ McCollum from Lehigh, senior, to Portland. Notably, Michael Carter-Williams went 11th to the Sixers. from Syracuse. Steven Adams went 12th to Oklahoma City. Yeah, that was the pick that Toronto gave up to Houston to get Lowry, and then Houston traded it to Oklahoma City. But Steven Adams, pretty good player, one of the best centers in Thunder history. Kelly Olynyk from Canada, from Gonzaga, went to Dallas, but Dallas traded him to Boston for the draft rights to Lucas Nogueira. So Dallas had Olynyk and traded him to Boston. Dumb move. Boston liked Olynyk. Shabazz Muhammad went 14th. Of course, that was the trade to get Trey Burke. And yes, 15th overall, power forward from Greece, Giannis Antetokounmpo, went 15th to the Milwaukee Bucks. Think of all the power forwards drafted before him. There were only two power forwards before him, Anthony Bennett and Cody Sellers. So the Cavs could have had him, and the Bobcats could have had him. Of course, hindsight's 50-50. But yeah, he was only the third power forward. Well, there were centers, but not power forwards. Shane Larkin, Barry Larkin's son, went to Atlanta, but traded to Dallas. Tim Hardaway Jr. went to the Knicks, 24th overall, from Michigan. Rudy Gobert went 27th overall to Denver, who then promptly traded him to Utah. Bad move. The second round brought Glenn Rice Jr. to the Sixers. Well, Sixers drafted him and then traded him to Washington. And not much else. Giannis Timma from Latvia was the last pick of the second round. The NBA is only 2 rounds. Seth Curry was undrafted from Duke, but he played in the NBA. Matthew Dellavedova from St. Mary's University. He also played in the NBA, though he was undrafted. And pretty much that's it. So, now you'll be asking yourselves, did Cleveland make the right move getting Anthony Bennett? No, he did not. Cleveland botched it. He was picked first by Cleveland and all that. It was good. It was like selected first overall in the NBA draft and signed a 2-year, $10 million contract. But unfortunately, because of his mediocre performances to begin his season, he was called one of the worst first overall picks in recent memory. Dude just got drafted. He actually didn't score a bucket, a clean bucket, not a free throw, but until his 5th game. And he actually missed his first 16 shot attempts in his career. So for the 2013-14 season, he played 52 games, 4.2 points per game, and 12.8 minutes per game. Maybe he does a lot better. And all that. Because after all, Cleveland might have been easing him in the lineup. So during a 3-team trade involving Minnesota and Philly, Bennett was traded to Minnesota and was waived in 2015 on a contract buyout. But the good news is the Raptors took a chance on him, giving him a Canadian chance. So he signed a 1-year veterans minimum deal. He played a few games, and then he actually requested to be sent to the NBA Developmental League, the minor leagues. It actually worked out that way. Although it was the NBA's first ever #1 overall pick to play in the D-League, at least Anthony Bennett had the balls to say, hey, demote me and all that. But Bennett's love for the game was questioned during his tenure in Toronto, and the organization was frustrated. So he was waived, and Brooklyn signed him to a 2-year deal. That didn't last long, as January 2017 he was waived, and then he went to the Turkish Super League and helped Fenerbahce win the EuroLeague title. So he got a European title. He was released by Fenerbahce, and then Bennett signed a minor deal with the Phoenix Suns. And then was traded to Maine in the G League. And then was traded to the Aqua Caliente Clippers. He then, he signed a 1-year deal with the Rockets, but was waived because he went through arthroscopic knee surgery. Then he signed with a Puerto Rican team. And then he signed with Hapoel Jerusalem. and was waived on January 2nd, 2022, and then he went to Taiwan, and now he's with Hinshu JKO Lioneers. So, in essence, Anthony Bennett, well, he played four NBA seasons with four different teams. 1 year with Cleveland, 1 year with Minnesota, one with Toronto, and one with Brooklyn. Playing 151 career games. Never playing for an NBA team for multiple seasons. That's a definition of a bust. Like, you couldn't hang on to one NBA team for more than one season. That kind of is pathetic. And this is coming from a Canadian who is kind of an apologist. But Anthony Bennett just made Canadians look like shit. Fortunately, though, the next year there would be a Canadian number one pick, and that's Andrew Wiggins. But Cleveland traded him to Minnesota to get Kevin Love so that they can help LeBron when he came back to Cleveland. Pathetic. But Minnesota got a franchise player, so I hate it. I'm sorry, Anthony Bennett, but you just couldn't live up to the hype of being number one. And the number 15 pick was better than number one. Pathetic. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.